and welcome back to another very interesting episode of Logistics with Purpose. I'm Enrique Alvarez, and I have the pleasure to have Maureen as co-host today. How are you doing, Maureen?
Good, Enrique. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Maybe it will be air on another day, but happy Friday regardless. No, this is very close to us, near and dear. We have a very incredible subject, a really good host here with us today, and I'm pretty sure that everyone that's listening very will be benefit by listening to what she has to say and her story because it's really, really amazing. Maureen, can you do us the honors?
Yes, we have Ying McGuire, CEO and President of NMSDC. So welcome to the podcast, Ying.
Thank you, Maureen. It's my pleasure.
Well, why don't we get right into it here? We have so many questions for you. Hopefully we can cover some of them before we finish up today. But we always like to start to have you tell us a little bit about yourself and your childhood and where you grew up. It helps set the stage for us to talk about, where you are now and how you got there.
Of course, my honor to be on your podcast. And so here's my background. I was born and raised in China, near Shanghai. And I had a different childhood from most folks. I witnessed the Cultural Revolution in my early childhood. It was a very dark period in China when the government led by Chairman Mao tried to root out educators and intellectuals. Intellectual meaning you went to college and etc. And so both of my parents were the intellectuals. And so I remember they were sent to this labor camp by day where they did hard labor in the rice paddies. And so we had a very modest living. I remember drinking water from wells and cooking out of coal heated stoves and 3 generations cramped in a little 2-bedroom condos. And our means of transportation were like bicycles. And my parents watched every yuan a cent until our family became a textile entrepreneur when China transitioned from Mao's era to a market economy in 1976 and after. But despite, the sufferings they had as intellectuals during the Cultural Revolution, my parents always kind of placed high value on education. So I was able to get very good education in the post-Mao's era and had opportunity to study at a Nankai University, which was ranked number 4 in China at the time.
Wow, that's an incredible story, and thank you so much for sharing it. It must have been even harder just being a woman back then, right? And there were so many different challenges that you had to face at the same time. But is there some particular story that you'd remember from those early years that kind of shaped who you are now and kind of gave you the tools that you needed further down the road to succeed?
Yes, I learned a lot from the childhood. One is you just, put a mind to it and just get work done, right? You work hard. But the one thing I want to share with you was my earlier days in US. So following the Tiananmen Square incident in China in 1989, I packed up my life into 1 suitcase and arrived in Los Angeles with very little English and $1,000 to my name. But I had a promise that I held in my heart, and that is the American dream. Then, I arrived in Los Angeles. I imagined what would later manifest as a reality, high education. I received an MBA, respecting corporate America, opportunities to be an entrepreneur, the freedom to vote and express myself, and representation on government nonprofit boards, and a greater community. And I have 2 beautiful children who's finally off my payroll. And you asked a question what, what shaped, who I am and what I do now. So in 2020, after witnessing the outcry of racial injustice, my vantage point of America's socioeconomic state drastically changed. Unfortunately, the opportunities that helped me get here today are not a reality for far too many people of color in this country. So I'm honored to really have the opportunity to lead NMSDC, because today my renewed American dream is to help systemically excluded communities of color to actualize their American dream and to close the racial wealth gap.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so you made it to the States and you got your MBA. And then shortly after you finished your MBA, you started with Dell, right? And you seem to have a bunch of roles there, but you ended with the global supplier diversity leader and worldwide procurement leader. Can you talk a little about your journey at Dell and how you got where you started there and then how you ended up with your final role there?
Yeah, that's a great question, Maureen. Professionally, I grew up at Dell Technologies. And that was my first corporate job, my first real job when I came to US. And Dell was the best training ground. You know, I always tell people like, hey, I'm really happy because they pay me to learn, right? Because I knew nothing about corporate America, you know, when I joined Dell. And also, you know, I started as a marketing manager, and the second year they gave me a role as a brand manager of desktops. So I had to learn everything about the computer, knew nothing about a computer, to be able to take the computer desktop apart and put back together. So it was like the best training ground. And also Dell has like really great open door policies. You know, I was but I was able to walk up to a chief procurement officer, senior vice president, say, hey, you know, I know I was a marketing person, but I know the essence of Dell at that time was supply chain. You know, Dell was known for the supply chain. And I said, I want to come to procurement, even though I knew nothing about the procurement, but I know you're moving the supply chain management to China. I speak Chinese, and let me help you. And so that led me to transition from marketing to procurement. And so I spent a few years in we call it direct procurement. So direct procurement, you buy parts and go into a computer and sell to customer. And indirect procurement is more buy things for internal consumption, like a marketing, like the travel, right? All that. And so I was in direct procurement for a few years. So I know procurement and supply diversity is all about integrate MBs in the supply chain, the value chain. And one of the greatest opportunities that was given to me, I was so blessed, was I was asked to work with the worldwide operations councils for Dell. And what the council was made up, everybody used to report a chief procurement officer, you know, so right. Chief operating officer, actually. So you have the head of SVP of product group and manufacturing and procurement and services, you name it. You know, all the operational senior leaders at Dell, they formed a council when we didn't have a COO. So I was I was a program person, help them get organized and come up with like we call it BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals, and really driving those big initiatives across the company. And one of the things we achieved was like we drove out, like we drove about $7 billion cost savings across 3-year period. And some of the life defining moment for me in that job was like, you know, I was sitting in the boardroom with Michael Dell and President Kevin Rowland then, and then all these EVPs, and they all have amazing experience in this industry. They shaped the industry, and I was a fly on the wall, just learning from listening to them. I was like, this is American dream, right? And it's like I was learning from these super experienced executive leaders who shaped the industry. And so while I was doing that, having fun learning, one of the procurement leaders, his name was Dave Brown, I remember he shot me email, say, hey, I have offer you cannot refuse. I was like, what do you have? Like, I'm in the boardroom. And he said, hey, you know, you have done direct procurement, you have not done indirect procurement. We have a role here for you. By the way, you know, we need to elevate supply diversity to the next level. And I said, what is supply diversity? Never heard about it.
That's incredible.
So he's like, hey, you know, there's NMSDC National Conference happening. It was 2006. You should just go and figure it out, right? And so here I knew nothing about supply diversity, walked into the conference of 6,000 people.
Wow.
In San Diego, 2006. And I met these passionate, very passionate, you know, regional council presidents, and then NMSDC president, then Harry Michelle. And I met all these amazing entrepreneurs like you all, NMSDC certified MBEs, and these passionate corporate members. And I was hooked. And the interesting thing is, you know, fast forward 15 years later, I'm at the helm of NMSDC, really leading the transformation to next 50 years. So it's interesting how life.
It's more than interesting. It's incredibly successful, and it's such an exciting journey, right? Because at the end of the day, you fully kind of validated your new renewed American dream, the way you call it, which was kind of helping others and breaching the income gap inequalities and all this other stuff. But before we dive a little bit more into the NMSDC, let me just ask you, after Dell, because you moved into the technology integration group as the VP of international operations. So you stayed in technology, right? That was your thing. And I think we all know that technology is incredibly fast changing and you have to adapt quickly. And what did you learn from kind of that time in your professional career about changing roles, being flexible? What has stuck with you from that time as well?
Yeah, good question. You know, I changed the roles a few times at Dell because, you know, when I get too comfortable at the role, I want to move, because when you're comfortable, you're not learning, right? And so let me share with you why I joined before I share with you, like, you know, what I learned from the role. So when I was at Dell Technologies, one of the things that I start to champion in the supply diversity industry beyond Dell was to take MWBE, go global to mirror their corporate customers' global sourcing strategy. Because, you know, as you know, large corporations, they have global operations that they want to do business with the suppliers who have multiple country presence. And so it's very critical for MBEs and MWBEs go global. And so I was.
And you, sorry that I interrupt you abruptly, but so for people that are listening to us and they might not understand the acronym that we've been using, what is the MWBEs or
so
MWBAs?
Yeah, so minority-owned business enterprises, MBE, and WBE is woman-owned businesses. Sorry for the acronym. Now everybody listening now learned a new acronym, MWBEs. Great question. And so as I was helping some of the scalable companies, MBEs, to go global, one of the companies, actually a few of the companies, including Technology Integration Group, and came to me, said, hey, you know, you ask us to go global. We don't know how to do this. Why don't you come and help us to do this, right? And so that was an interesting moment when I thought, okay, so I learned a lot from corporate America. Maybe it's time to be entrepreneur again, right? And so I joined TIG, Technology Integration Group, based in San Diego, and TIG is NMSDC certified MBEs, and NMSDC has this program called a Corporate Plus, that they are the one, you know, demonstrate their capacity to do national global contract with the corporate America. And I ended up create and lead the international business of TIG.
Wow.
The things I learned, you know, one is you can do anything you want if you set your mind to it and if you're willing to learn and put a hard work to it. Because when I took that role, I never managed P&L before. I did a piece of, the P&L management, but never like in charge of the whole business. And I've never opened operation by myself in a foreign country before. So I had to really literally like learn while doing it, making mistakes and fell, but got up and do something else or learn from it. So the other thing is, I learned that only thing that is constant is change. So that the world's changing, the technology's evolving, so our business model have to change. And so I remember, we had to change from hardware sales driven company to service driven company, because when Amazon launched AWS, when Microsoft launched Azure, when Google launched Google Cloud, many customers no longer needed like their own data center, right? So if we kept selling hardware, we're not going to grow our revenue. So we have to pivot to services. So that's something that I learned many things, but those are the two kind of stood out.
You constantly impress me with, you went from Dell, which was a pretty structured organization, it seemed, but it was growing. And then you went into this entrepreneurial role and you started and created something from scratch. I mean, you have a lot of really varied experience that you bring to the table. You were also have some experience in economics, I read, where you were appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce to the U.S. Investment Advisory Council. Can you talk a little bit about what that was and what you did there and your role there?
Of course. One thing I always tell my two children is, whatever you do, make sure you make impact, on the community, in the community that you live. And so I always like doing things to help people. And one of the things that I was passionate about working in Austin communities, bringing foreign investors to invest in US so they can create jobs and they can teach us things, that we need to learn. And so as I was volunteering for the community, I had amazing opportunity. I was nominated to the U.S., actually appointed by Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker, to the U.S. Investment Advisory Council, where our goal was to advise the secretary and her team on bringing more businesses to U.S. to create jobs. And I cannot forget the day when I was sworn in at the White House with Secretary Pritzker. And I thought, wow, when I came to US, dreamed about my American dream, but did not include, I was sworn in the White House to serve the administration, to be an advisor to Secretary of Commerce. So that was amazing. And so, we provide advisory guidance to the secretary, but I'm very action oriented, and so I actually organized during that time frame with my a friend and a local economist, Angela Angelou. We organized the Texas-China Investment Summit, and we brought in during that time there a lot of money coming from China. So we brought investors to Texas and look at the different project opportunities. And so we practiced what we advised, basically. So it was kind of voluntary work, but it's a very fulfilling work.
Well, it sounds like you don't have like a second free, or at least with your impressive curriculum and the experience that you've had, it seems that you don't get bored too often, that's for sure.
Never a dull moment.
Perfect. No, and as you said, right, only change or constant change is the only change is the only constant, and if you're not changing, you're not learning. So you're now, and we'll deep dive into the organization that you're leading. You're the CEO and president of the National Minority Supply Development Council, which is the NMSDC, a somewhat large acronym, but an incredible organization, very impactful, very successful. I believe it's one of the nation's largest, helping minority-owned businesses. We are actually at Vector a proud member of the NMSDC, but for anyone that's not too familiar with the work that you do, the organization, what you stand for, what is the organization about? What do you do? How would you define it, and kind of explain it to people that might not know it?
Yes, so I'm really passionate about this organization and its mission. So NMSDC was created in 1972 as a direct result of President Nixon's executive order to address racial equity. And an interesting thing is, 50 years later, we still have the same issues, so work's still there. Our mission, which is the why, the purpose of our existence, we're here to serve as a growth engine for NMSDC certified minority businesses like you. And the second element is make sure that we enable our members, these are the corporate members, to advance economic equity by doing more business with our MBEs. And our preferred future, our vision is we want to be the leading organization to drive true social economic equity and generational wealth for communities of color. And really, the ultimate goal is to really end the racial wealth gap in this country, right? So some of the work we do is connecting, convening is very critical. We create connections between minority business enterprises. Now you learned Equidem MBE and corporations, and connect MBE with other MBEs, connecting MBEs with the public sector to really help them benefit from each other, promoting entrepreneurship and a growing wealth for systemically excluded communities of color.
So what other things is the NMSDC doing to try and correct the unequal wealth access to wealth building in underrepresented communities?
Yeah, so few things we do. So we have a 4 pillars of excellence. One is advocate. So we are the voice for minority-owned businesses with the policymakers at the federal level and also state, local government level. And then the second one's certify. I'm going to go into detail a little bit. And the third one's develop. And then we have the connect I'm talking about, right? So let's talk about certification first. And thank you for being certified with us. NMSD certification was created 50 years ago, and many other NGOs start to follow, our process. Certification has been the gold standard for 50 years. And so basically we authenticate that's minority owned and controlled, led, managed. And so that corporate dollar spent with MB is truly flowing into the community of color. Despite the previous success being the gold standard, we're not really resting on laurels. We recognize the world has changed and the need of MBEs and the corporation have changed. So we're in the process actually working to simplify and streamline certifications, and while protecting the integrity through the use of modern technologies and tools like Six Sigma. So that's on certification. And we want to make it, easy and simple while have the integrity. And then the other pillar is it's on development, really focus on accelerating MBE growth. For the first time in the NMSDC's history, we actually putting together a MBE growth department. We putting MBE growth front and center. And we brought in the first entrepreneur in residence, Kurt Trevin, from the Native American community. And he is leading the whole MBE growth initiative. It's really focusing on increasing access to capital for MBE, focusing on understand the corporate demand way ahead of time so we can build a pipeline for MBE so they have the necessary know-how, the relationship, and the capital. So when the RFP hit the street, they're ready to go, right? And so on the development side, we have a lot of practical steps we're doing besides the classroom activities. Some of the classroom activities we also provide, like, we launched the NMSDC Learning Center, really provide guidance and training for minority-owned businesses and also corporate supply diversity professionals on how to gain traction on their business or on their supply diversity program. We have things like Advanced Black Entrepreneur Program, which is a collection of practical resources to help Black business owner grow and scale their business. We have things like Cyber Ready MBE. It's a training program, helping MBEs with cybersecurity infrastructure. As you know, it's super critical these days to be
Absolutely.
successful.
Yeah.
To work with top corporations. We have Black Farm Equity Initiative. So those are like a development. As you can see, we have lots of things going on in the national office, and we have 23 affiliate councils across the United States. And then we have 5 international partners. We're about to add more. So all of us have these developmental programs for MBEs that you can take advantage of it. The third thing I want to talk about, how do we correct the lack of access is the connect. So we're correcting the lack of access that so many MBE have historically faced. We do this by providing MBE access to relationship opportunities with corporate members, with themselves, with the government. For example, we have business connection matchmaking events. For example, you may have attended our annual conference, 50-year anniversary conference in New Orleans. We had a mini, curated connecting events for MBE and the corporations. And as you know, the federal government recently made unprecedented investment into the U.S. economy through laws like bipartisan infrastructure bill, CHIPS Act, the CARES Act. There are trillions of dollars being injected into the economy. So we're working with MBDA, another acronym, Minority Business Development Agency, and which is inside the U.S. Department of Commerce and the Department of Transportation to ensure the MBEs can capitalize on these wealth building opportunities. So that's another element of action.
No, and there's plenty, right? I mean, I was just going to talk a little bit about our experience, and we would probably need a couple more episodes to go through all the different development programs that you have and the organization has. So it's very important. That's why we wanted to have a little time today with you so that people that are listening to us, minority-owned businesses out there that actually need all these different resources to continue growing successfully and changing the world for the better, just reach out to your organization and deep dive into all these development programs and participate, right? Most of these programs are useful and practical, and they're year-round, so it's very easy to join them. I was in particular interested in one of them, Ying, the Emerging Young Entrepreneurs, or the EYE for another acronym. Can you tell us a little bit more? Because I know that for you, changing the mindset from the beginning and just really changing the next generation must be a critical part of your strategy, correct?
Absolutely. So therefore, we have this Emerging Young Entrepreneur and called I program. That's another acronym. The I program, it's kind of 9-month program. It's really designed to provide the next generation, people my children's age, of minority entrepreneur participants with support to enhance their growing business. And during the program, business owners receive like guidance from like a corporate sponsors. Their fellow MBE may have scaled to a different stage, and additional stakeholders. And so the participant utilize a interactive pre and a post conference courses, along with 5 days of hands-on training and practical application. applications. So they provide necessary skill and tools, connections, strategy, either to start or grow their businesses. And
But they don't have to have a business up and running yet. It could be
it
a
can be
business
startup.
idea, it could be a startup, it could be anything.
Exactly.
Wow.
And it's actually application are not open. And so if anybody's listening to this podcast, and you are a young minority business owner, I really encourage you to apply. It's a great timing right now.
We will definitely include all the links to everything that you've been saying when we post this episode. And so what's qualified as young these days, I guess? Is there like a limit in terms of the age, or?
Enrique wants to apply. He's just not sure
Yes.
if he
Clearly not.
Hey, I consider you as young compared to me, so you're good.
I don't think that's the case, but
Wow. It's a great segue into just talking about how minority-owned businesses generate a lot of, economic growth. We read a study where you had commissioned a group to look, and it seemed as though they came up with $400 billion in annual income output annually, which is not an insignificant number, so tell our audiences, why should people invest in minority-owned businesses, or especially, in their supply chain?
Yeah, so you're definitely reading what we're doing. May of 2022, we released our economic impact study, and it showed, aggregate certified MBE revenues reached about $261 billion annual revenue that generated $400 billion, but precisely $396 billion economic output annually, and 1.75 million jobs. So if you look at the pure number, seems very impressive, but if you look at relative to our GDP, it's kind of depressing, right? 261 billion annual revenue, that's like 1% of our US GDP, and a minority population is already 40%, and it's going to be a new majority for the country. So there's no equity there, right? So one of our regional councils in Michigan and our partner, Supply did a study, and they said, hey, if you don't do anything different, corporate America, it's going to take us 333 years to close the racial wealth gap. And obviously, it's not acceptable.
No.
And so that means like we need to do more and faster. Like what we did last 50 years, 261 billion, we need to accelerate that. So therefore, you've heard me talking about $1 trillion goal. And so that's kind of aspirational goal. We're like, hey, we need to quadruple this in coming years, and to really move the needle forward, right? And so that's why we need everyone, whether it's MBE doing business with MBE, whether it's corporation, be more intentional, create more opportunities. It's not just check a box. And whether it's moving from supplier diversity to business diversity. And so here's the difference here. Supply diversity is, okay, this is CPO's job. It's in the supply chain. You utilize MBE in the supply chain. The business diversity, meaning it's everyone's job. CEO, CMO, CFO, CIO. Anytime you spend anything at all, you should consider utilize MBEs. You should consider try to develop MBEs so they can grow their capacity to be able to compete for your contract. So we're talking about, supply diversity to business diversity, and one of the earlier champions for transitioning from supply diversity to business diversity is the greatest John Rogers, the founder and CEO of Area Investments. And so they're doing a lot of work in Chicago in this area to make sure other C-suites leaders other than CPO are part of this movement.
It's incredible. Not only the amount of support and impact that your organization has generated, but also kind of the attitude that you have kind of leading it. You're like, no, that's not enough. I mean, $400 billion, it's a lot of money, but that's clearly, relatively speaking, to the other things that you pointed out, not enough. And you also mentioned it's everyone's job. right? It's not only the MBEs, it's also the corporate sponsors, and it's everyone really listening, whether you are a minority or not. I'm sure you, throughout the 50 years of this organization, you've experienced amazing success stories from maybe both sides of the equation, maybe the corporate members and then also the MBEs. Could you share a couple of those with our audience today?
Sure. When I came on to this role, I said we are the best untold story. We have the both best untold stories like yours. And a couple of story. One story you may have heard the story about Rosa Santana and the Form Automotive and Toyota partnership in the New York Times that came out in August last year. And it's really very inspiring story about how Toyota showed their intentionality in diversifying their supply chain by creating new businesses, by building long-term relationship with this Hispanic-owned woman business owner who was in staffing business, but gave her opportunity to learn to make products in US and providing jobs in her community, in the Hispanic community. And so she transitioned, she expanded her business from only doing the staffing to manufacturing because Toyota's intentionality, and they taught her how to do it. And so this relationship to eventually lead to Toyota, bring her on to lead a company that built truck beds for Toyota is like unbelievable. So check out the story on New York Times.
We'll post it. We'll post it on the episode as well. That's definitely an inspiring story and something that not only validates your organization and what you're doing, but it also recognizes those corporate members that realize the potential and power of having a diverse supplier network and having diverse partners more than suppliers, business diversity in their companies.
Exactly. Like, I encourage corporations, like, don't do this, just check a box, but give MBE extra little lift, and they can rise to be some of the best partners that corporation can ever ask for. So you want to hear another story?
Yeah, of course.
Is that what you're waiting for?
Okay. I thought you had at least 2 or 3 more. So no, we don't want to.
We didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah, you have some great stories. Yeah.
So I don't know. Did you attend the 50th anniversary annual conference in New Orleans? Did you have a chance?
No, not this year. I couldn't.
No, I wanted to, but it was over Halloween, and so I couldn't make it because I think it's the last Halloween my kids are going to celebrate. So I'm
so sorry. Yeah. So 2023, we moved for that concern. We moved to before Halloween. So I'm going to see you all there.
We will be there for sure. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm participating in the matchmaking event later this month as well.
Oh, perfect. But the reason I mentioned that was, the participants, we had 5,000-6,000 people there, and I received so many people's feedback say, hey, this is really the best conference. We got so many opportunity came out of it. And interesting thing is the last year, we actually outsourced the production to a I-program alum, a certified MBE.
Wow.
And the company called ABCD and a company, and they're based in Maryland. And they put together this amazing experience conference for NMSDC. And I think it's a great example of what certified MBE are capable of, and really importance of providing, increased developmental opportunities and procurement opportunity for them. And they really shined. And so many corporate members said, oh my gosh, who did this job? I was like, hey, it's MBE. See, MBE can be the world-class event production company. So that's another example.
And I think you're right. It's become evident to me. Well, it has for a while, but I think for other people out there and some other corporations out there that this is a competitive advantage. Like hiring and working with MBEs is not, as you said, something that you just check the box. It's something that if you don't do it, you will probably be relegated down the road because the new generations and the future is definitely diverse and it's definitely more equal and it's definitely more sustainable. So if you don't get onto this train early enough, then you'll probably just be left out.
Absolutely.
Mhm. So Ying, to close it up here a little, we have talked about supply chain and logistics and entrepreneurs and your experience at Dell and with the U.S. Department of Commerce. Can you share with us your thoughts on what does logistics with purpose mean to you?
Yeah, so before we started, you all talking about, what you're doing, helping other underserved communities. So you're kind of the role model for this. But from my perspective, it's about logistics that are more sustainable. I think this industry have, as you know, have some of the, negative impact on the climate. You're moving things around. As we participate in this industry, we just need to be mindful of protecting the earth and utilize underserved communities like MBEs to do so. We have a plenty of, NMSDC certified 3PLs, logistic company like you with great, solutions, even security solutions. And we need to connect the companies are doing this work in a sustainable way with the corporations who have a very large logistical needs. And by extension impacts on the environment. So I would love to create like long-lasting partnership between our MBE and the logistics side of the economy to help really expand environmental sustainability for the industry. So to me, it's sustainability.
Oh. It has been wonderful to talk with you today. In addition to, we need to post a bit of a glossary of all of the acronyms we use in our podcast, so all of our listeners are aware of all the terms we're using. We also want to let them know how can they connect with you, how can they connect and learn more about NMSDC. Please share with us. So we want to share that info with our listeners.
Yes. Well, you can visit nmsdc.org to learn about NMSDC and sign up for email list so you can get regular updates about what we're working on. And you can also find us on LinkedIn, search my name, you'll get to NMSDC, Ying McGuire. I don't think there's another Ying McGuire on this world. So it's going to be very easy to find me, the Chinese Irish name. And we have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So I encourage also you all follow my personal account on LinkedIn. So I give updates every so often. And I want everyone listening to this podcast to really connect with me on LinkedIn so I know that you were listening. And I also want to make sure that you all know we have 23 affiliate regional councils and 5 international partners who serve as our local boots on the ground. And regional council have signature events and programming throughout the year besides our annual conference that I mentioned. And so you can go to our website to find your regional affiliate council and learn how you can get involved at the local level. And I know you are in Atlanta, so we have one in Atlanta, Georgia Minority Supply Development Council. And we talked about our conference is going to be in Baltimore in October. And we have matchmaking events that you can take advantage of, the virtual one throughout the year. And I just want to finish by emphasizing that our mission to close the racial wealth gap is bigger than any one of us. It's bigger than any individual. It's bigger than any one organization. It's bigger than 23 regional council and NMSDC. So I encourage everyone listening to this podcast take a larger role in this work. If you're a corporate member, be more intentional, make sure we take a bold step to include MBEs in every purchasing decision you have. And if you're a corporate leader, you're not a corporate member, become a corporate member by visiting our website. And if you're a policymaker, look at the policies like those listed on policy agenda on our website that's aimed at creating greater opportunities for minority-owned businesses. And if you're MBEs, if you're not certified, get certified. Like, you all said, let's get involved and engage in these developmental programs and help support other MBEs. Every one of us spend money. So every time you spend every dollar, think about who you're spending money with, right? And so if you are someone who's just passionate about the cause, and donate to NMSDC so we can expand our work. So together, we can really create a future with a very strong and resilient US and a global economy where everyone, regardless your color and the background, has a fair shot of achieving the American dream. I really enjoyed this podcast. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Ying, the pleasure was all ours, and I'm sure our listeners as well. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with us today to talk about something that's so important, so critical, and we're very passionate about, which is just ending this racial wealth gap that you mentioned. I enjoy the conversation a lot. We're a proud minority certified company, and of course, we look forward to continue working with you, other MBEs, and maybe other corporate members as well. So thank you so much. And for everyone else that's listening to this episode, thank you so much for joining. If you enjoy conversations like the one we had with Ying McGuire today, well, don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much.